What is up, Sopranos fans? Kino here. I'm back with another Soprano log. Today we're looking at the third episode of the third season, Fortunate Son. Now, if I sound a little different in this episode, it's because my stupid Blue Yeti microphone ended up failing on me. I had to go to the store and get a new microphone. I'm still working on the settings on this one, making sure it sounds good. But let's be honest here, my voice never sounded good to begin with, so we might as well just jump into the episode. In this episode, Christopher is finally made. He becomes a made man. If you ask me, it's been a long time coming. After what he did on the Triborough Tower situation alone, he should have been made then and there. But irregardless, Christopher and Eugene go to their making ceremony. It's held in this basement, and there's definitely a lack of formality in this ceremony, especially compared to other scenes I've seen in other movies and TV shows where guys get made. I'm comparing it to something like Boardwalk Empire, where there was just a lot more sense of like grandiose to the whole thing. It kind of seems like Tony's just winging it off the top of his head, which sounds like a Jersey thing to do. I mean, Phil was complaining about this for a reason. And there is no sword and gun on the table, although they do get their fingers pricked, so he was wrong about that. But Christopher sees a bird in the window, either a raven or a crow, I'm not sure. But he takes it as a bad omen, and it seems like it is, because things definitely don't go his way in this episode. But after the ceremony, they have this party. Christopher gets the sports book, which is a gambling operation, from Paulie. Paulie gives it to him, and it's kind of meant to be like a gift, or at least that's how Paulie's presenting it. But he has a $6,000 a week minimum that Christopher has to pay, which we'll see him have a little bit of trouble in this episode with. Meanwhile, Tony's at the party. He's talking with Carmine Sr. This is where we get the first mention of the Esplanade, their big construction project that they're going to make a lot of money on because they control the union of the construction workers. And Carmine Sr. also mentions that he knows about Tony's spells, as he calls it, his panic attacks, and he knows that Tony's seeing a psychiatrist. And even though he's playing it kind of nice, he's like, don't worry, there's nothing embarrassing about it. I think he's kind of hinting at him that, hey, I know everything that goes on here. Never forget that I have eyes and ears everywhere. So it's kind of like an alpha move there on Carmine's part. And it rattles Tony a little bit because later on at the therapy, he tells Melfi that he wants to start seeing results, or else he's not going to keep doing this because he knows it makes him look weak to the other mobsters. So Melfi wants to get serious too and really focus on him getting better. But funny enough, Tony's actually the one who's, holding things back. He's really distracted. He takes a call about some gambling things in the middle of their session. So, even though he wants results, he's not really willing to work hard for them. Christopher makes a mistake at the sports book, and they end up losing some money. He doesn't have the full 6 figures that he owes Paulie, and Paulie punishes him by charging him another $2,000 to make up for things. So we can see that, despite his kind of generous statements at the beginning of the episode, this is really just a money-making scheme for Paulie, and he's only looking out for himself. So we cut to Sunday dinner at the Soprano house. We learned that Ralph is actually dating Rosalie April, so he's kind of integrated himself with that family. Jackie Jr. is running late. He was supposed to be there. And I noticed a very interesting detail, which is that Rosalie defends Jackie when Ralphie is complaining about him, but when she gets Jackie Jr. on the phone, she's, telling him he needs to get his ass over there. That's kind of like that mob idea where you never go outside the family, you never, show any kind of disloyalty to your family to outsiders. And even though Ralph is dating her, he's still kind of an outsider right now. So I'm willing to bet she learned that kind of mentality from being married to Jackie Sr. But Jackie Jr. does not show up. He's really rude, disrespectful. And so Tony sits him down for a meeting at Vesuvio's. Now, Jackie thinks that Tony had his Uncle Richie killed. And Tony didn't have Richie killed, but he knew about it and covered it up. But even still, Tony lies and says that he didn't kill Richie and that Richie actually went into the witness protection program, which somehow Jackie believes, even though Richie was, spent 10 years in jail without saying a word. And to think he would get out and then become a rat. It's just, so unrealistic. But this idiot kid just believes it. And Tony even has this funny line where he says, you'd be a shithead to believe me, but I didn't do it. And then Jackie ends up believing him, thereby confirming that he is a shithead. Just a really funny bit of dialogue there. But Tony tells Jackie that his father never wanted him to be in the life and that he should stay in school. Although Jackie's really struggling in school, he doesn't have the brains for, becoming a doctor and going through medical school. So he's left kind of wondering what he should do. Chris needs money to pay back Paulie for the money he messed up at the sports book. Jackie Jr. and his friend Dino tell him about this idea they have to steal money from a charity event at Jackie's school. So Chris does that to get some money to pay back Paulie. Jackie Jr. is the driver. He ends up pissing himself, as they're driving away, but even still, they get away with the money. Christopher pays off Paulie, but Tony's pissed off because he does not want Jackie Jr. involved in the life, and he specifically told Christopher this earlier. Meanwhile, Janice is living at Livia's house with Svetlana, so they're kind of sharing the place for the time being until Svetlana can move out. Janice wants the records back that Livia gave to Svetlana, and Svetlana refuses. So in the middle of the night, Janice steals Svetlana's prosthetic leg, and it's a very expensive leg because it was made here in America, and she wants it back, of course. She calls Tony to try and get him to help. He shows up at the house, and Irina is there. She kind of arranged this. Irina wanted to talk to Tony again and see him, but he kind of refuses to engage with her. He says he'll help Svetlana get back the leg, and then he goes to the fridge to see if there's anything to eat. He sees some gabagool there, and it reminds him of when he was a child. So when he was a young, child, he saw his father chop off Mr. Satriali's finger, the owner of Satriali's pork store, over a gambling debt. And this event didn't really traumatize Tony, but it kind of made him realize how his father operates, how they get all this free stuff that they get. And it really freaked him out when he saw how much his mom was turned on by getting free meat from his father. And he ends up having his first panic attack in that moment as a child. So in therapy, they discover this link between meat and his panic attacks because it reminds him of all the violence his family is involved in. Meanwhile, Meadow is mad at Tony after the racist things he said to her friend Noah. She keeps seeing Noah, kind of to spite her father because she just does not like his racist attitude. It's a little bit of a cringy storyline, to be honest, but funny little detail here. Noah says that Tony's lucky he didn't punch his lights out. And that's actually foreshadowing to the final episode of the series. You'll remember that it cuts to black at the very last scene. Well, what most people don't know is that was actually Noah. He showed up to that restaurant and punched Tony's lights out, and that's why it cuts to black. True story. But the last kind of story beat happening in this episode is AJ joining the football team. It's funny, he joined kind of because he just wanted the uniform. We learned about that in the first episode this season. But irregardless, Tony is finally proud of his son. AJ's doing pretty good with the football. And they're actually connecting and bonding for once, instead of AJ just goofing around doing nothing. But AJ is under a lot of stress. When he goes to visit Meadow at her college, he sees all the college kids, and it just kind of overwhelms him that people expect him to, be like Meadow and go to college and be like all these students. And there's even more pressure when he's offered the position of team captain. And all this stress finally gets to him, and he ends up collapsing. He has a panic attack just like Tony. So we're getting the idea that this condition is inherited, not just from Tony's father to him, but also down to AJ too. And we're going to explore that throughout the rest of this series. But that is this episode. Stay tuned for the next Soprano log coming soon.